Can a simple grid violation change an entire Formula One season? The FIA has spoken, and the punishment is not just a fine, it is a direct message to the heart of Red Bull. But why does this represent the great opportunity that Oscar Piastri and McLaren were waiting for to reign in 2025? In the heart of Austin, Texas, just as the traffic lights began to turn on to begin one of the most tense weekends on the 2025 calendar, an incident was brewing that would have consequences beyond what was visible on the track. The pressure was suffocating, the margins of error were non-existent, and the championship was hanging by a thread that seemed to get tighter with each Grand Prix. McLaren arrived at the United States Grand Prix as a solid leader in the World Championship, and Red Bull, after an erratic start and the controversial replacement of Liam Lawson by Yuki Tsunoda. In the midst of that charged context, the unexpected happened. During the formation of the grid, with the teams already out of time for any direct intervention and the entrances duly closed by the stewards, a member of the Red Bull team committed an act that crossed all the limits established by the international regulations of the FIA. This technician, in an action that still generates debate, invaded the grid area of the second box, which corresponded to Lando Norris's McLaren. He did so with an apparent intention to remove a marking tape used by McLaren to optimize the precise positioning of the car before the start. This type of intervention is not a simple minor offense. The starting grid, in the final moments before the formation lap, is a sacred environment from a safety point of view. Any unauthorized presence compromises not only the integrity of the procedure, but also the safety of pilots, teams, and even the technical staff themselves. The rules are clear. Once the access closure has begun, absolutely no one should be beyond the protection line. And Red Bull did it. Was it a deliberate attempt to disrupt McLaren's environment? A symbolic gesture of psychological pressure on a direct rival? Or simply an error in judgment amid the competitive chaos that Red Bull is experiencing? None of the answers exempts the team from the act committed. The FIA did not take long to react. Unlike other occasions where bureaucracy prevailed over sports justice, this time the sanction came quickly and forcefully. Red Bull was summoned before the stewards just after the race, and the verdict left no room for interpretation. A financial fine of €50,000, half of which was suspended under the condition of no recidivism. The impact was immediate. Although technically the sanction did not affect the race results nor did it imply a direct sporting penalty, the blow was symbolic and profound. It was the first time this season that the FIA clearly drew a line in the sand, making it clear that Red Bull no longer enjoyed the political and media shield that in previous years seemed to surround it. It was a warning, yes, but also a clear message to McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and the rest of the paddock. The regulation is not a suggestion, it is the law. And this is where everything starts to turn. Because beyond the monetary figure, this incident represents a breaking point. Red Bull, desperate to regain its dominating status, had begun to act with the desperation of someone who feels the power is slipping through their fingers. McLaren, for its part, responded with coldness, efficiency, and a consistency typical of champions. In the midst of the chaos, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris remained focused, oblivious to the outside noise. But inside the box they knew that this mistake by Red Bull could become the turning point of the entire campaign. The sanction was not just a punishment. It was an exhibition. A revelation of the internal fissures opening up in Milton Keynes. The scene was recorded in the memory of the entire paddock. The Red Bull member in the prohibited zone, the stewards intervening, the tension at the McLaren wall, and the confirmation hours later that the rules exist to be followed. Even if your name is Red Bull Racing. To understand the true impact of this sanction, you have to look at the exact moment in which it occurs. McLaren arrives at the Austin GP as the undisputed leader of the Constructors' Championship, while Piastri and Norris alternate in the top positions of the Drivers' Championship. What could have been interpreted as a still open fight is now unbalanced by factors that transcend merely sports. The FIA's intervention not only penalizes Red Bull, legitimizes McLaren's rise. It gives them institutional validation that cannot be bought with speed on the track. From a psychological point of view, this is invaluable. Piastri, young but cerebral, has built his season on 3 pillars: consistency, calm under pressure, and surgical precision in the race. He is not a driver who dazzles with Verstappen-style aggression, nor with drama like Hamilton. It's methodical, immutable. And now that the FIA has taken action on the matter, the message is clear. Formula One is watching Red Bull's every move with a magnifying glass, and that represents an invisible shield for McLaren, a protection network that did not exist weeks ago. Technically, McLaren is in the best shape since the late 90s. The MCL 39, an evolved version of an already dominant MCL 38, has been defined by Andrea Stella as a machine built from the logic of marginal performance. There was no revolution in design, but a total optimization. Every square centimeter of the car was evaluated to provide efficiency, balance, and stable downforce. That means the car is not only fast but also predictable, an attribute that drivers value almost as much as grip. Piastri has known how to exploit this stability like few others. His communication with Tom Stallard, his career engineer, is a perfect choreography between the analytical and the pragmatic. Every stint is thought out, every strategy change anticipated. And that has allowed him to be the only driver along with Norris who has scored points in all the races of the year. With back-to-back podiums in China and Japan and consistent long-run pace, Piastri is executing a master plan. Keep his head down, avoid mistakes, and capitalize on other people's weaknesses. And now, with the sanction against Red Bull, the situation changes. Because this is not just a penalty. It is confirmation that something is not right in Milton Keynes, and McLaren knows it. The British team has historically been attentive to these signs. When an opponent begins to make unforced errors, it is a sign that there is pressure, internal chaos, or loss of control. In this context, McLaren's mission is one: to continue building advantage without exposing itself to outside noise. The internal reaction of the team has not been one of euphoria. It has been about concentration. It is known that the championship is not won with sanctions from others, but it is also understood that each mistake by the rival is a window of opportunity. Andrea Stella has insisted on this approach. Each weekend must be executed as if Red Bull were at 100%. And that forces Piastri to maintain absolute precision in every session, in every corner. In short, what this sanction means for Piastri and McLaren is more than a circumstantial advantage. It is a symbolic break from the psychological dominance that Red Bull had maintained for years. It is the demonstration that the balance of power has shifted. And now, for the first time in a decade, a driver dressed as a papaya can look at Verstappen face to face without having to raise his voice. But the most important thing is not what the FIA has taken from Red Bull. It is what he has given indirectly to McLaren, a narrative. That of being the team that not only competes cleanly, but also resists, responds, and takes advantage of every slightest crack to consolidate a winning project. Piastri isn't winning on points alone. He is gaining authority. And that, in modern Formula One, can be more powerful than any stopwatch advantage. Sometimes a minor sanction hides a major crisis. And what in another team would have remained an administrative anecdote, in Red Bull has become a red signal. The intervention of the FIA in the United States GP, with this sanction for violating the procedure on the grid, is just the visible symptom of a much deeper illness. Red Bull no longer controls the game. He's chasing him. From the outside, the team still looks powerful. Max Verstappen has won races. The RB21 single-seater maintains very high levels of speed on a straight line. But internally, the structure shows alarming cracks. The team that for years built its dominance with German precision and Austrian impudence, today seems to improvise. And that has devastating implications in an organization designed to attack. And we must not forget the most important thing. Max Verstappen observes all this with the cold gaze of someone who already knows that his legacy does not depend on a single shirt. If the project stops being competitive, it will leave. His father said it. He hinted at it. And the signs are there. Red Bull has even called him to technical meetings to define the future of the car, a movement that seems to desperately seek validation. Because the fear of losing it is no longer paranoia. It is a real possibility. The driver change, the FIA sanction, the war of nerves with McLaren, everything is part of the same chain. Red Bull is losing control of its narrative. And when a team stops controlling the narrative about itself, the next thing it loses is the championship. The FIA has been clear. Fringe behavior will no longer be tolerated. And although the current fine has not altered sports results, the message has been sent. And it is possibly the most dangerous of all for Red Bull. Because it doesn't punish points, but it erodes reputation. And in this sport, perception matters as much as speed. The entire paddock has understood it. Red Bull is on the tightrope. And what happens in the next races will define whether we are seeing a course correction or the beginning of an announced decline. McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and even the FIA know it. Everyone watches. And no one is going to stop the approaching storm. And what do you think? Are we witnessing the birth of a new era with Oscar Piastri at the helm? Was the Red Bull sanction really a turning point or just a footnote in a story still dominated by Verstappen? Can McLaren maintain the pace it has at the beginning of the season with Verstappen closer than ever? Leave me your thoughts in the comments. I want to read your analysis, your prediction, your intuition.